We're beginning Chapter 7, The Corruptive Influence of Easy Money. Of Deadly Medicines and Organized Crime, How Big Pharma Has Corrupted Healthcare by Peter C. Goetze. About 20 years ago, an incident alerted me to the way the industry busy for ends. Clinical investigators from several countries had attended a planning meeting where we discussed various trials that both the company and we might be interested in. When we were on our way to a lavish dinner paid by the company, the person in charge of the clinical trials in the company handed me an envelope, which I didn't open till later. The envelope contained a letter thanking me for my contribution to the one-day meeting and a $1,000 bill. I had never seen such a large bill before, and I realized that this is how corruption starts. Little by little, you don't get more in the beginning than you are able to justify to yourself. Isn't it reasonable that I get a handsome honorarium for ripping a day off my busy schedule to provide expert advice to a drug company? Back then, $1,000 was a good deal of money. If you don't send the money back, you have signaled that you might be willing to think you are even more valuable for the company next time. Helped by flattering company people who tell you how important and indispensable you are, you go on telling yourself that the increasing payments are fully reasonable, until you no longer notice the amounts have become obscene. To pay cash leaves no trails. In December 2000, I lectured at a course in Bern, Switzerland, and during a lunch in town, I talked with a woman who once worked for a Swiss drug company. She was asked by her boss to go to the Nordic countries with a stack of brown envelopes to be delivered to doctors who participated in trials in hypertension. She felt it was a weird assignment and asked what was in the envelope. Dollar bills. She then asked why the company didn't simply transfer the money electronically and was told she could leave the company if she continued asking questions. She refused to deliver the envelopes and left the company. 12 years later, we moved offices, and when cleaning up, I found a handwritten note where I had asked her to write her name. I Googled it, found her current phone number, and called her. She confirmed the story. She no longer works in the drug industry, but with public health. Other insiders have told similar stories and have described the practice as routine. One of my friends in industry has confirmed that it's common to pay doctors in cash. A well-known male oncologist was nicknamed Wall to Wall H. First name left out by me because he preferred to get paid in Persian rugs. By using far-fetched arguments that didn't hold water, the doctor had prevented the introduction of a far cheaper generic drug into the hospital containing the same active substance as the original cancer drug. You may wonder what his interest could be in this, but it's simple. By being loyal to the company that introduced the drug on the market in the first place, and which still charged far too much for it, considering it ran out of patent years ago, and much cheaper generics are available. The benefits he receives from the company will continue. It's like Pavlov's dogs. You'll be rewarded as long as you do what's expected of you. There is a culture among doctors that there's a culture among doctors that allows acceptance of easy money, and companies may offer to transfer money in ways that cannot be traced. In corruption report, which left no doubt that there is widespread corruption in healthcare, it is usually the drug industry that takes the initiative, but doctors, ministers, and other government officials have sometimes extorted the firms. UK researchers found that Polish government systems for deciding which drugs will be paid for by the state is deeply flawed. One heart drug was accepted for reimbursement, even though the scientific evidence supporting it was doubtful. Later, the press discovered that the decision had been taken after the relative of a high ranking ministerial official had a new flat arranged by the drug company. The pharmaceutical giants have many friends in high places. When a person from Pennsylvania when a person from the Pennsylvania office of the Inspector General had uncovered payments into an off-the-books account from Pfizer and Janssen, he was appointed lead investigator. After his findings had revealed that these payments went to state employees who developed guidelines recommending expensive new drugs over older, cheaper drugs, he was escorted out of his workplace and told not to come back after being told by a manager the drug companies write checks to politicians on both sides of the aisle. The approach from the drug industry is subtle in the beginning, but the size of the favors quickly escalates. If a doctor proves useful for the company, a common method of getting friends is to pay them excessively for services or even for services not rendered. A pizza and a pen light are like early inoculations, tiny injections of self-confidence that make a doctor think he will never be corrupted by money. But let's see how obscene payments from the industry to doctors can be and how deep the corruption. Some doctors are so influential that drug companies may tactfully accept when they pocket money given for another purpose. Finnish neurologists cashed money intended to cover research costs, for example, laboratory examinations and assistant salaries, which they let patients, communities at the university pay for. In one case, the fraud amounted to millions of euros, which involved 180 bank accounts, many in Switzerland. Ironically, 2 professors involved in the crimes were responsible for supervising the ethical status of scientific projects nationwide. But one of them and his son, who was found guilty of 23 crimes, ended up in prison, and the other professor was also likely to get a prison sentence. Sometimes the industry's initial approach to doctors is blunt and leaves no doubt about corruption. Sandoz offered a $30,000 a year consulting position to a primary investigator to convince him to accept a favorable conclusion of a trial. Although the company's drug, isradipine, a calcium channel blocker for hypertension, had a higher rate of complications than the competitor. An unsolicited check of $10,000 arriving in the mail from Schering-Plough with a consulting agreement required only the doctor's commitment to prescribe the company's drugs leaves no doubt either. Schering-Plough's tactics included paying doctors large sums to prescribe its drug for hepatitis C and to take part in company-sponsored clinical trials that were little more than thinly disguised marketing efforts that required little effort on the doctor's part. The company flooded the market with pseudo-trials and paid physicians $1,000 to $1,500 per patient for prescribing interferon, which the patients or insurers paid for. One thing is the copious amount of money doctors may receive when they are entangled in the medico-industrial complex. An equally interesting issue is how widespread the corruption of academic integrity is. Before I reveal these data, try to think for yourself. What proportion of all doctors do you think receive money from the drug industry, including those who are retired, work in general practice, work in public health, don't prescribe drugs, or don't make important decisions on their own. For example, the thousands of junior doctors who are required to follow guidelines written by their seniors. In Denmark, it is required by law to get permission from the drug agency if a doctor wants to work for a drug company unless the assignment is trivial, such as giving a single lecture at an industry-sponsored meeting. These permissions are published on a public website, but until recently, the compliance was poor. In June 2010, the drug agency sent a warning to 650 doctors of industry payroll without permission. At the same time, 1,694 doctors were listed. But including the 650 who weren't approved, 12% of all Danish doctors worked for the drug industry. Some doctors had several roles in the same company, and some worked for several companies, the maximum being 13. When we looked at the registry in November 2010, 4,036 roles were listed, which is one for every 5 doctors in Denmark. This number is shocking, as Denmark is regarded as one of the least corrupt countries in the world, and a leading politician remarked that must be difficult for the doctors to attend to their usual work when working for so many masters. Table of companies collaborated with most doctors. I'll just put it on the video. Who's at the top? Table 7.1 shows the 10 companies that collaborated with most doctors. It is hardly a coincidence that 7 of them are also in the top 10 as concerned sales. The Danish Medical Association denied there were any problems, and it met requests for more transparency, including the nature of the hired work and the size of the honoraria. With arrogant remarks that this didn't concern others, including the patients, we shall see in the next chapter whether this is a tenable position. Chapter 8, what do thousands of doctors on industry payroll do? Good question. We will do that next time.